Hello once more to all my friends on the internet. I'm Doc Ian. This is Monday, the 26th of February, 2018. Once again, I am here to show you what I've painted in the past week. And it's these 5 guys. That's all. Well, that's enough considering how little time I've had to paint. And I'm going to have even less time the coming week, by the way. So, I mean, don't expect even 5 finished miniatures next week. Anyway, I finished this little adventurer, or henchman, or whatever you want to call him. He's outfitted for a dungeon crawl, and he has some sort of little familiar or little guy riding along on his backpack. Not sure if he knows it's there, or if it's sort of dropped in on him from the ceiling and is going to be a surprise. But I thought this was a fun figure with all his equipment and the torch. And then we have these Nolzur's miniatures, and I finished. Here's one of the dwarves. This, I'm starting out with the best of them. Now when I'm saying best, I mean the best constructed mini, the best sculpt, not the best paint job, but the paint job is okay. This guy is the second best. He's kind of fun. The sculpt is kind of weird in the way the skirts of his coat and his armor or whatever it is billow out and then drop down again. That doesn't look very realistic. But I like the lightning, whatever it is, spewing from his hand. And then we have the 2 elves, which are really, really bad sculpts. Really boring. There was nothing I can do. I mean, now I chose relatively drab colors because they're supposed to be rangers, but it wouldn't really have mattered if I painted them brightly. They wouldn't have looked any better. And I'll go into more detail because now that I've finished painting these, I'm going to finish up my review of all the Nolzur's miniatures that I've picked up and painted, and I'll provide my closing comments and observations in that video. But in general, I mean, the problem with these elves is the lack of detail, and that is caused partly by the material and partly by the choice to go true scale instead of heroic scale. Like this guy is exaggerated in his proportions, and he's a simple sculpt, but he's still fun. It's not. He has things that are interesting about him, as opposed to this elf, which has nothing interesting about it whatsoever. And the detail on his clothing or armor, whatever it's supposed to be, is so fuzzy as to be unpaintable. I just slap the wash on it and hope for the best. But anyway, the dwarves were okay, especially the one in the book. I kind of like him, actually. So a mixed bag this week of finished stuff. Let's move on to works in progress.
So only a few other models actually have any paint on them. As of yet, we have these 2 sea elves. Not much has happened on them. I've experimented some with the hair. I haven't. I'm trying to decide on a color for the skin and the hair. Aquatic elves in D&D can have a lot of different skin tones and hair colors, but they all have to be somewhat sea related. They some shades of blue or green need to be in there. And speaking of green, we have these dragons, which where I've base coated the scales. That's all I've done, but that took a while because the challenge when you have these finely sculpted scaled surfaces is air bubbles. Putting on the smooth base coat in one go is almost impossible. You have to have the patience of a saint to go slow enough to avoid any air bubbles. And of course, if you don't have that patience, then you have to go back and pop them, the ones that do occur. And you're never going to get all of them, so when the base coat dries, they will pop on their own and leave white spots, and then you have to go do a second coat. cover those. At least if you are anal about it, like I am. And I can see a white spot down here now. Oh well. Yeah. But work continues. And there's no real... I mean, there's nothing drastically new about any of these models. I've done this sort of thing before. So, I think it'll work. So I thought I'd show you a few steps along the way of making this dragon. This is after assembly and gap filling and just the first step of gluing him onto a larger base. Now, the choice of base, this is one of my wooden, I think it's MDF, bases, and the placement of him on it is so that approximately equal amounts stick out to the side. So you got the tail on this side, and you have one wing on this side. He's sort of curled around the base in the shape of the body. Now for the gaps I used gray stuff, not green stuff, because gray stuff is a little harder. It's harder to work with, but it also cures harder, is not as bendy and flexible as green stuff is. And I thought I needed that for the the size of this mini. And you can tell that there's quite a lot of gap filling here. The wings, underneath. I debated with myself whether to actually attach the wings before painting, but they're not that much in the way. They're pretty much, because they're almost straight up, they don't really cover anything else except for this area here in between. And the thing is that if I'd left them off, I would have had to attach and do the gap filling after painting, which would have meant, you know, more painting to fix the paint job afterwards. I didn't really want to get into that, so I thought I would. And by the way, the only part I haven't gap filled is here where the head is attached, because I don't think that should be. It doesn't really matter if there's a gap there. It's a part that would hinge sort of anyway. Where was I? Oh yes. I assembled him fully. Anyway. So this clip I'm filming just a few days after last week's Ramble. I'll return when I've done some more to the base and show you how it turned out. And so this is what he looks like after he's been based. I put some bits of some resin bits of various kinds. This is like a mound of dirt with some bones sticking out of it. This is a pile of coins, and this is a skull of a cow or something of that order. And then there's various amounts of basing material applied in a couple of layers to build it up a little bit, create some differentiation. It all looks very random now, but it's going to be tied together when I prime it, which is the next step. So I think that'll be accomplished before Monday, so I can show you. And we finally have old Blightfang all primed and ready to go. And I've even started base coating the base a little bit, so it is slopped onto the dragon itself. I've just primed the dragon a rather neutral light tan color. I have not gone for a pre-shading. I haven't done any zenithal priming. And the reason for that is that when it comes to a really big model like this, I mean, it's almost as big as my hand. Zenithal highlighting is overrated. You don't really need it. It doesn't look right, I think, if you do a really exaggerated zenithal on a model this large. Because the reason we do it on small minis is that you need to exaggerate at the small scale for it
even be visible. But with this guy, I mean, just the light falling on the model creates natural shadows. And so you don't actually need to paint in the shadows as much. I mean, I'm not going to skip it completely. I'm just not going to do it, like I said, in the same exaggerated way that I would do it in like a human-sized mini. But anyway, this is a really big guy. We'll have to see how far along I get next week in applying paint to him. But anyway, I was prepping more than this, wasn't I? So to show off where I am with the GW minis, I've assembled them, and for the plastic ones, this was fairly easy. I'm not sure why they made sculpts that cover up so much of the detail, like his face is completely hidden by his arm. This is the kind of thing where you wonder if you should paint them separately, but I'm not going to bother. The other Dark Elf, it doesn't have as many hidden areas. It'll probably be difficult to get at everything in the hair, to get some brushes in there, but we'll make do. The most difficult one is probably the wizard. Now, the last time I painted the wizard from this kit, I painted the side pieces separately. I painted the insides of the robe and the robe on the main figure first, then assembled it, and then painted the outside, because it's really difficult to get to these things. But I decided not to bother this time, because it's not a display piece, it's not a competition piece. Nobody's going to see the insides. I'll just get some dark primer in there and some dark paint, and boom, call it done, down in those crevices. And I'll highlight the stuff that you can actually see. There's a little bit of gap filling probably needs to be done here, but maybe not. Maybe the glue fused that enough. We'll see. I'll just put some primer on and we'll see. I haven't put him on his base yet. I've started, I think I want a 2-layer cork base here to bring him up a bit in level. Not sure if I'm going to do that before or after painting. We'll see, we'll see. Anyway, the most difficult one is probably, strangely enough, Juzag. Now, I've not applied any basing grit here yet, and you might notice I've put him on backwards. That is, normally, with a slotted base, the slot is in the back of the base. It's off center, and you place the figure so that the most open space is in front of him. I've done it the other way around this time. That's because this piece with the bats, see I've stuck a pin in it, is because it's just this little bit of metal that you're supposed to glue to the base, and that won't hold because it's really tall. You need the pin. I'm going to have to paint these. These I'm going to have to paint separately before I attach them, because there's no way it's going to be almost touching his cloak. Which means that for this mini I'm going to have to make the basing the very last thing I do. After I painted the figure and the bats and attached the bats, then I'll add like basing grit and prime the base and paint the base. Yeah, in hindsight, it feels bass-ackwards. It's not the way I usually do it, but in this case, that's the way it's going to have to be. So yeah, that's how far they've progressed. Just because I'm always looking to look ahead in time and, you know, be prepared for the next project, I thought I'd give you a sneak peek at what I feel like doing next. And it's another Reaper Bones kit, another lizard type creature. This one is the Hydra. It is a, I believe, 5-headed Hydra. So not the 7-headed Hydra, but just 5. He's relatively small as well. This is another one where I'm going to have to build it a base to sit on or stand on, because one has not been provided at all. I think it's standing on 4 legs probably, and I think that's stable enough, but I like having just a base underneath to protect the surface or whatever. So hopefully by next week I will at least have taken these pieces out and cleaned them up a bit. And the Kickstarter of the week is from Midlam Miniatures again. I backed the Kickstarter called Common or Garden Gnomes. And we have 2 little packs of, well, gnomes. And they've visualized gnomes as all having these little conical caps, like the tomte of Swedish lore, which is kind of amusing. That's not the traditional, perhaps, D&D gnome, but I like it. I think it's a cool, fun idea. And so there's 14 little guys here that I might paint up one of these days. We'll see. Anyway, that was this week's episode. As usual, I hope you liked it. Click like, subscribe, and join me again next week. Same time of week, approximately, for another ramble. Until then, this is Dakian signing off.